Let's go live now to Melbourne. I'm joined by Dr Colin Rubenstein. He's a long-time Executive Director at the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council. Colin, thanks for your time. I spoke to Josh Burns, the member for Macnamara, earlier, who spoke very movingly about the impact on the Jewish Australian community, that so many Jewish Australians have loved ones, have family members, friends, that so many know people affected by these atrocities. I guess it's still a state of shock and mourning for many here in Australia too.
There's no doubt about that, Kieran. It's a shocking development. It's taken everyone by surprise. The sheer barbarity of the terrorists is beyond belief and really beyond contempt. The shameless brutality against children and women and disabled elderly ladies, deliberately butchering them, humiliating them to the nth degree, and celebrating that. That is a shock, I think, to all Australians. It's particularly painful and shocking to the Jewish world and to the Australian Jewish community in general. I'm sure to most Australians, this is totally unacceptable, depraved butchery, war crimes in the extreme, deliberately attacking and killing civilians in a war. And it's a tipping point. It represents a tectonic change, I think, in the Middle East. It's a watershed that has brought to light to those who didn't understand or want to understand the reality of Hamas, that it is committed to the absolute destruction of Israel. And this has always been the fundamental barrier to moving forward to this sort of reconciliation and a peaceful outcome that most reasonable people want. Certainly the Israelis have wanted and have offered on so many occasions over the last 30 years.
Well, you know Israel better than anyone. This has really eerie similarities to the shock and the surprise of that 1973 attack, albeit traditional warfare in 1973. This is anything but, as you said, with war crimes and terrorism on show in the last 24 to 48 hours. Now, from what you've seen here, this surprise attack, it must shock you in the sense that the advanced IDF, they're one of the most advanced militaries in the world, the intelligence agencies, some of the best in the world, how this could have been allowed to happen again 50 years on.
Indeed, at 50 years to the day, again, an unexpected, unbelievable shock and surprise. That was an existential threat to Israel's very being, of course, had those armies broken through up on the Golan and down in the Sinai. It didn't actually affect to the same extent people on the ground in Israel proper in the way that this attack is doing to this very moment. Over 1,000 Israelis killed, butchered, many more injured, well over 2,000. Hostages, 230 at least. This is having a massive effect. This is Israel's 9/11 to the nth degree. Israeli sort of vulnerability is on show here. And yes, an intelligence failure of the highest order that will be a shock. But the sort of cat and mouse game that's been played with Hamas, because Israel's understood the nature of Hamas rejecting the peace offers because they don't want their state alongside Israel. They want the state, instead of Israel. And in fact, of course, Hamas represents extreme Islam. Its charter shows that it's about Islamist revival. It's a threat to other Arab Sunni countries, of course. And if its attack, as anybody following these events understands, is really only made possible by the largesse, by the financial support, by the arms support of Iran. And this, of course, represents a threat not just to Israel, it represents a threat to so many countries, Arab countries, in the broader Middle East.
When you look at the Israeli politics of the last few years, I know not everyone keeps up with it, but you certainly do. There's been a lot of division a lot of polarisation within Israeli politics and the debate there. This will bring Israelis together, but is that part of the reason why there was a blind spot that has seen this atrocity perpetrated?
Yes, I think there are two basic reasons for the events, with the advantage of hindsight. Undoubtedly, the very divisive, polarising debate within Israel over judicial reform has attracted the attention of Israel's enemies, giving them to believe that Israel is somewhat a paper tiger, that it's imploding, it's collapsing, and certainly encouraging them to develop these plans to attack when Israel is distracted. And unquestionably, that has been a factor. The other factor, of course, that we need to take into account is the increasing coexistence and reconciliation between Israel and the Arab world, the Abraham Accords, which are genuine, are deep, are meaningful, and of course were threatening to be extended in a very important way in terms of Saudi Arabia and Israel establishing a high degree of normalization. And these two factors, perhaps amongst others, certainly help to explain the logic underlying the planning for this very extreme attack. It could also, of course, hopefully show the way forwards, in the sense that, in a way, it's Israel under attack in a huge way, but the Iranian involvement and the Iranian game plan represents a threat to all of the moderate actors in the Middle East, the broader Arab Sunni world, and they well know it, which of course is one of the reasons that they have developed these very meaningful and constructive ties with Israel.
There was a rally closer to home in Sydney where an imam spoke celebrating the outcome of these events in Israel. What's your reaction to that? I know James Paterson, the Liberal senator, has warned anyone attending another rally in a couple of hours from now in Sydney that Hamas and Hezbollah are both listed terrorist organisations, and anyone with that sort of paraphernalia, flags or supporting those groups could face the scrutiny of intelligence and security agencies.
Well, I can only agree with you. I mean, Hamas and Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, they're prescribed terrorist organizations in this democratic, multicultural nation, as they should be. So, yes, I would say the authorities would be looking at the legal dimensions of this, because morally, this stance is profoundly offensive, I think, to all Australians, certainly to all Jewish Australians, when we've seen such brutal atrocities occur and keep occurring. They're totally inconsistent with the values of a democratic, multicultural Australia. I'm sure they're being widely condemned from shore to shore in this country. And I can't believe that any mainstream Australian today would have anything but absolute contempt and revulsion when they see these celebrations taking place.
And would you hope that our security agencies are keeping a very close eye on subsequent rallies and protests of solidarity?
I not only would hope, but I'm sure that they almost certainly will be. And that is absolutely necessary in the circumstances. There are limits to free speech and protest. There's no right to promote hatred and extol violence and brutality and bestiality that we see on display. I think all mainstream Australians would agree with those sentiments and would expect our authorities to take the appropriate steps.
Dr Colin Rubenstein, thank you for your time as always. We'll stay in touch.